Hello and welcome to this week's episode of The Main Event, your Champions League history show here on Heart and Hand, and it's part 2 of the famous 1998-99 season, Manchester United's treble, and a lot more besides. Adam and David and Rob are all here. Hi, Adam.
Trying to think of different ways to say hello, but I can't really think of one, so hello.
I want a different language actually every week, if that's okay. In the spirit
well,
of,
I've got an intro. I'd prepared one, and now you just skipped right over it. Picture it. You remember, listeners, I said last week that I was working at nights back then. I would tape Champions League matches and avoid the score and go home with a carry out and watch them. I get home to watch this, and I'm sitting watching it. My parents are in the room, and it gets the final minute, and Manchester United equalise, and I pick up the remote to fast forward through the adverts for extra time, and my mum immediately, who knows nothing about football, jumps up and says, "Don't," and I was like, "Why not?" And we all know why. But that's how unbelievable that final was. That's how unbelievable it was. That it was Disney. It was Stephen Bochco. It just came off. My God, theatre of dreams. Not only are you going to win the Champions League, but you're going to do it in the most remarkable way possible.
Stephen King, if you're Bayern Munich, right enough. Rob, where were you? What were you doing that copyright Bammy night in Barcelona?
I would love to say I was there, but I wasn't. I was a skint civil servant. So I went back to see a few of my mates still at university. So I went back up there and watched it with them. But I did a similar thing, actually. So when United equalised, I kind of went to basically try to kind of get to the toilet first for extra time. So I didn't actually go in. Stood by it. I can still picture where I was, like standing there, just watching the screen, waiting for the final whistle, so that I could have a nice cathartic piss before the golden goal. But yeah, thankfully I didn't actually go in. Yeah. The weird thing about that, the one thing I remember, I couldn't get pissed.
Missing that.
I know. Yeah, the one thing I remember
being at a urinal, just hearing that mayhem. Oh my goodness, that makes me come out in hives just thinking about missing something like that. Anyway, we will get to that. We could just kind of wrap up right now. I feel we've got straight to the end already. Let's start with a different focus then, Adam, please. Dynamo Kyiv, we were great fans of theirs the season before. They got through the very end. Just about. They again had to do a bit of work in order to get there, but they did. And they have the holders, Real Madrid, in the quarterfinal. A fair draw, I suppose, in that first leg, and they do a number on them. They give them a hiding in Kiev. And I think this is something that the neutrals probably wanted to see. I think the neutrals had really kind of got behind Kiev in that previous season, and getting to see them into the semi-finals. This was, I think, well received everywhere outside Castilla. I think.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think you're right. It's one of those things, isn't it? You get to the top as the bigger club, but then this sort of plucky underdog comes, especially playing the type of football, I guess, and scoring the amount of goals. I mean, we spoke about Rebrov and Shevchenko front two last week. They go better, I think, this year. Certainly Shevchenko is really starting to come into his own as that elite attacker now. I think he's the top scorer, is he, in the Champions League, if I'm not mistaken, this year. This is the year before he goes to AC Milan. He goes in that summer, and I think he's really starting to become that guy.
Was equaliser Madrid and then the two at home? Yeah, I mean this is.
They scored first. Did they not score first in Madrid?
They scored first in Madrid, but he certainly scored their goal over there. Yeah. But right, so they have this breakthrough thing last season, Adam. Him especially. You say, well, can they do it again? Is this a kind of one-off? And he's up to it. He's improved on that, and everyone, again, neutrals are going, yeah, this boy is absolutely special.
Absolutely, yeah, spot on. And he's now 22. if you like. So he's not exactly old, but he's got all that experience. I think by the time he left, he wasn't far off 150 appearances for Dynamo. And we speak about youth development, the importance of getting the minutes in at that level. And I think he's a poster boy for it. Obviously, Shevchenko is probably going to have that talent anywhere. But again, you think about it now, someone like that isn't in Ukraine until they're 22, 23. As young as that probably still is, they're picked up at 16, 17, 18, and coming to a top 5 league. So again, it shows how things change and how players were sort of left to develop, if you can call it, left to develop, playing in the later stages of the Champions League, etc. But yeah, I think it just speaks to that sort of bygone era. But you're right, yeah, they were fantastic. Both these games fully deserved their win. Lobanovsky, again, we spoke about, we waxed lyrical last week on the tactical side of it, his importance to that club over 30, 40 years. And I think they're definitely reaping the rewards here, and I can see why. I can see why people would want to back an underdog like this, because there's just goals everywhere, just goals. That's what they did this year in particular. Seems like there's a big uptick in goals everywhere, but obviously Dynamo, those two up front that we spoke about last week, just going on another level this year. And it's really great to see. Madrid's probably quite disappointing for them, like you mentioned. They're appearing. They're still going through a little bit of a, I don't know, getting their sea legs. It was a great season last season, but then they're sort of jumping back and forwards a little bit. Obviously, it'll be another few years before they win it again. Similar maybe to Arsenal there, in that sense that you come in, it's difficult to come in and just get going and be there right away and feel like you're the big team and you're in there. It's Juventus and Ajax had a couple of years, Milan a couple of years of getting in there and getting to grips with it. So yeah, I think maybe just a bit of a perfect storm there, but Kiev well worth it for me.
And Madrid under Hiddink then, by this stage, when's this going to fall apart? When does the moustache come in and kind of sort everything out? And we'll obviously speak about that when we're back to discuss 99-2000. But it's a circus that just needs a ringmaster, isn't it?
Yeah, I think you're right. Del Bosch comes in the year after, this summer then, right? But yeah, he's it's interesting because there is a bit of juggling about here. We've spoke about Inter having a few managers. Juventus we'll come on to as well now under Ancelotti, which did not go very well there. And there is this sort of jumping about, whereas before it had been quite consistent, hadn't it? We had Capello for a couple of years at Milan and Lippi for Juventus. Cruyff, Van Gaal staying about for a couple of years, but it is starting to jump about a little bit, and these clubs are probably suffering from it.
They sacked him just before the quarterfinals, didn't they, Hiddink? Which is quite fascinating. Yeah.
Very Real Madrid thing to do, isn't it?
Of all clubs who don't do the "you deserve to lead us out" in this thing you've qualified for, they do not give a toss about it, frankly. If they don't think you're going to win them a trophy, then you are out on your arse, and it's and they've not. I mean, remember they sacked Capello because you won the league, but you didn't do it in an entertaining enough fashion. Yeah. So
it's the same with Del Bosque, wasn't it? Del Bosque,
that was a joke.
That was a joke.
And win the European Cup, Champions League, and he didn't do it well enough, or he didn't win the league as well. So on you go.
It was Big Toshak back then.
He was. He was in charge for the Kiev games. Yeah.
Which legendary Real Madrid player did he give his debut to this season, lads? And legendary Spanish player as well. Spain's
Casillas.
Yes, well done, that man.
Did he play that season? I knew obviously the year after.
He did. He gave him his debut, and the young man famously was arriving at training on the bus until he started getting mobbed. So they had to get him a driver because he didn't drive. So they had to get him a car and a driver.
I was reading something about Shevchenko, and in the 97-98 season, he was living with his parents.
Oh, that's awesome.
He's destroying Barcelona in the Nou Camp, and he's
his dad couldn't have said to him, "Look, if you don't move it, you need to go, and you're never going to amount to anything." And he's like, "I've just knocked Barcelona out at the Nou Camp, Dad. Like, fair enough then. But no, I mean, just these are nice tales, I think, of a slightly different era. Because as Martin said, you don't get to be 22, 23 now. You know, the kids, they have an agent at 60. And look, we can debate whether it's a good, bad, or indifferent thing. The fact is, it is a thing. And that we just have to accept the reality of it.
Another one of those for me that I forgot about earlier on, Martin, was that Man U Barcelona Old Trafford game. Xavi makes his Champions League debut in that one as well, which
thrown in.
Yeah, he must have been 18, I think.
And looked good, actually. I remember thinking he looked. I didn't think he'd become one of the greatest midfielders of all time, but I do remember thinking he looked just so composed. Yeah.
Rob, your thoughts on Sheva and his explosion at this time and the career he had?
Well, there's two things. They're absolute dynamite, Shevchenko and Rebrov. I'd forgotten, because he was quite a meek figure at Spurs, I'd forgotten just how good Rebrov was. Shevchenko, though, his dribbling in particular is just incredible. The sheer speed, but what I think really sets him apart is speed with the ball, which is quite a difficult thing for a lot of players. But also, he's kind of escapology to get out of. He's surrounded by three players, limbs everywhere, and he'll emerge with the ball.
He's twisty, isn't he? He's almost kind of like
he is.
His movements are sort of feline, and as you say, he goes into these like black holes where there's arms and legs flying, and somehow he shimmies out of it without contact, and you're like, how did he do that? I really want to try and emphasize to people who maybe weren't about at the time just how exciting that him and Rebrov were.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
You tuned in to they were appointment TV.
The two things surprised me about Kyiv. One is how good they were at set pieces. I mean, they're amazing at counterattacks as well. But just the other thing I like about Shevchenko is how direct he was. Just no bullshit at all, no nonsense. I'm on the halfway line on the right wing. Where's the goal? I'm getting there. There's a game away to Lons, and he breaks. I think it's 2-on-1. There's a guy on the far side who's really kind of eagerly running in for a pass. And I'm thinking, don't bother, mate. It's not coming. And Shevchenko just walks through and scores, of course. But yeah, just like so direct in a purely running with the ball. Absolutely amazing. There's a great compilation on YouTube. It's worth looking up. Just type in Shevchenko 98-99. And it's really thrilling, and it looks fast even by modern standards, which is quite rare for somebody that's 26 years old, whatever it is now. It's fantastic. And Rebel as well. And also just a word for Bielkiewicz as well, who played some amazing passes, both feet. I don't know much about him beyond that he died at 41, which is really sad, but had a complication after a blood clot. He's one of those players who you kind of catches your eye when you watch a game. You buy him on Championship Manager, you think, I know what I'm talking about, and he's absolute shite on there. It was always disappointing. I'd like to know a bit more about him, because if you look, there are so many. For example, the first goal against Bayern comes from, he whips this outside the foot pass. Looks a really good player.
I didn't know about him passing away at that age. That's
no, nor did I actually.
Really sad.
Yeah.
We mentioned last week then that Bayern Munich and Kaiserslautern met in that all-German quarter-final, 2-0 in Munich, and then 4-0 in the return leg. Effenberg just doing Effenbergy things. The aforementioned Uwe Lösler with an OG, bless him, in that 4-0 defeat. So Bayern cruising through to meet Kyiv in the semi-final, and it looks as if at one stage, Rob, that they're going to go to the final. They're 3-1 up. Shevchenko's got another couple. Tarnat, who just scores jammy free kicks, I think, is the only thing I can really kind of say about Michael Tarnat.
I hate that bastard.
All he appeals to do. He just hits it hard and low, and it'll do something. He pull one back, but Sheva Kyiv were 2 up by then. They go 3-1 up, and then Effenberg just spoils every party he's ever at, I think, really. It's a beautiful curling free kick. But even then, there's this, I can't remember off the top of my head, Rob, who loses possession in midfield for Kyiv and with 2 minutes to go, but it's dreadful play, and Bayern just lump it for Carsten Janker, who just bulldozes his way into a goal scoring opportunity, and it's 3-3. And I remember feeling then, they've done that.
Yeah, and they had a great chance. Kosovsky, who scores the third goal, has a brilliant chance to make 4-1. Goes through, and I think he chips it over Khan, but also over the bar. Yeah, I think the third goal, it's Kaladze who comes out, wins it really well, and then he and someone else leave it to each other. And
it's Laurel and Hardy stuff.
But yeah, they should have. The impression I get is that was probably in many ways their best performance of the whole tournament, attacking performance, because against Madrid had a lot of chances, I think, whereas the Bayern game, they probably, Form wouldn't necessarily have flattered them, but Bayern, of course, the whole kind of stickability and everything else, and you're right. But even then, of course, in the return leg, Kyiv had plenty of decent chances. I do think around this time, I think Oliver Kahn was probably the best keeper in the world, and he makes some huge saves in particularly the second leg, but he makes a couple in the first leg as well. But yeah, you're right. But everything about Kyiv was kind of a throwback, the whole mystery, but also the conditions. Like, it's pissing down, the pitch is a mud heap. And a lot of teams would have been broken by that, by how good Kyiv were, how fast they were. And Bayern they just don't go away, do they? That team in particular.
No.
Weirdly, they end up losing to a team with the same mentality. But around that time, I mean, Bayern weren't a particularly good team, but they just they were just so powerful, so experienced, so mentally strong. And
here's the thing about the final, Rob, that I think is very important to mention, is that although United, by the time the final comes around, we've had the epic semi-final, right? Year of destiny. Bayern felt that. Bayern felt they'd got played off the arc. Well, and Bayern felt that the old if you win a cup, there's always one round you look back on and think, and they felt that was Kyiv, and they really felt that. So it wasn't a case of in any way that them going into the final and because obviously they'd be aware of the United thing, but they were like, no, actually it's us. We've got the day of destiny.
Yeah, there's quite
Mario Basler scores the winner in that
absolute peach.
Brilliant goal. He will score another, of course, in this story. Again, someone that doesn't have this maybe storied career. He goes to Kaiserslautern, funnily enough, after this season. But in this moment, at this time, Adam, he was a threat. He was a danger. We've picked a few of these guys out over the course of the show thus far that were just having, I guess, the time of their lives in one particular season.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. I always remember him in Football Manager as just being a MR right midfielder, and even at the time I was like, that's just such a strange.
No good to anyone.
Just a strange thing.
You need an AMR at least. Come on.
Yeah, never signed an MR or ML ever.
No. So I mean, at the time, I remember thinking quite tidy. Obviously, he scores their last two goals in this competition that we'll come on to. But I think he symbolised it. I think, as Rob said, it's not a terrific Bayern team. They've certainly had many better than that. Fantastic goal. If ever a goal's going to put you into a final, to be fair, it is that one. He goes to Kaiserslautern, I'm sure. Does he not? After this,
he goes to Kaiserslautern after the summer. Yeah.
Him and Djorkaeff go there.
He started at Kaiserslautern, so I think it was his
back again.
Hometown club. Yeah.
Yeah. I think he was a bit of a playboy. I think he's one of those smoking and drinking, kind of Prozinecki / Alberts type thing as well. So it's maybe just one of those things. He just hits a perfect storm and has a good season. But yeah, I think that's fair. He probably sums up this team. Capable, I think, on their day, but maybe not quite got it.
But skillful. I mean, he didn't lack self-esteem. I think it's fair to say.
No, definitely not.
I don't think many in that side did.
Which must actually, but seriously, that must have made what happened to them even harder. Like what happened to them would destroy any team, but for that lot, there's a quote from Effenberg saying something like, "How can football be like this?" You can imagine him trying to process it.
I mean, it was so unbelievable, and I mean, we'll talk about it, but Samuel Kufor, the famous beating the turf, and I think as a club collectively that they just could not accept what had happened to them. But in terms of that mentality, they were able to ride the storm, and they then go on and they they win it. So
most of them are still there, but
could have.
Most of them are still there, but one of the people who was most hurt by it, Basler, because he should have scored the winning goal in the European Cup.
Should have, yeah.
He's one of the few who isn't there, so there's no kind of no exorcism.
I think it's an interesting point, Rob, about how do you deal with that when you get so much self-esteem. That is how you deal with it, because it hurts on the night, and for sure.
That's a really good point.
The people and teams who carry themselves off go into training, or pre-season training as it would be in this case, or whenever. Because I think they lost their German Cup final after this from memory. That you are able to write it off and say, well, we're good enough, we go again. It's the teams who are neurotic. Yeah. It's the players who carry that weight forever who can't shake it. Ericsson used to talk about Sinisa Mihajlovic at Lazio. He could have the worst game imaginable and then would come in unperturbed because I'm Sinisa. I'll be brilliant next week. I am brilliant, and this is a bump, and that's life, and would not let it weigh him down with that kind of anxiety.
And they had to take another blow next year, which we'll talk about. But yeah, I agree. I think they don't get enough credit for the mental strength they showed to eventually win it. I would agree with that, because it's the same group of players, same manager, really.
Pretty much.
Two clubs that I would expect to recover from it are Bayern Munich and Real Madrid. They're the two clubs that I would say would just come out of it.
Yeah, I agree. Maybe Liverpool, but yeah,
maybe Liverpool in Europe, yeah.
Because you've it's heritage by that point. You've built that thing. Okay, the other side of the draw. Say United, because Juve, very briefly, Adam, they've got Olympiacos and they're 2-0 up. And they concede late at home. That puts them in, a slightly precarious position, I suppose. A 90th minute penalty. They don't get those in Italy. They do get them in Europe. And we talked about the Greeks having a big Balkan striker. Gogic is there. He thunders them into quite an early lead, and they just throw everything at Juve. It really is raining chances. They hold that for a while, and Antonio Conte, who's going to pop up now and again over the course of this show. I think they wanted a foul on the goalie. It isn't. He's in the acres of space with just a few minutes to go. Gets that equaliser, the goal that keeps them ahead in the tie, and they get through again. Though Adam, Juve kind of dancing and dicing with the devil here. They're very, very close to going out.
Yeah, they are, and I think you just need to look at the team that plays in that second leg to see Zoran Mirkovic, who don't even remember at all. Juan Snyder, who they brought in for a bit of money, didn't really do anything. Rampula's playing in goals, so they're very much on their last legs through injury. The team reaching the end of the cycle, and it could easily have been, like you said, without that sort of last 5 minutes or so goal from Conte, they were potentially in big trouble there. I think we've said the Greek teams seem to be very well organised the last couple of years in particular, and it would have been a big shock if they had went out. But you just, I guess, hope that even with Ancelotti, who they did not like at all, Juventus, it was
when did he come in, Adam?
So February, I think. So he's maybe only been there a month or so. I think he comes in in February, but they're not happy at all. And I think this is what's so interesting about these. Like we spoke last week about Ancelotti and how rigid he was with 4-4-2 at Parma, which is just the complete opposite to how he is just now. And the Juventus were like, well, we play 3-5-2. We're so flexible. Lippi's had fullbacks at left wing and centre halves up front practically. What is this guy going to do? Plus, all he's done is manage Parma. We want somebody who's at the big levels. It's funny how things change, but they weren't happy with him at all, even into the summer. The Ultras had a banner out the first game of the season, basically telling him to go away, which is very mature. So
you told us last night it said a pig cannot coach, which is brutal.
A pig cannot coach. Go away, Ancelotti.
Go away.
Very, very mature. But yeah, I think they've got Zidane, they've got Deschamps, they've still got Davids, they've obviously got people Inzaghi up front. But I think, as we've said a few times now, the loss of Del Piero here is huge for them, because the season or two before it he was fantastic. So I think, again, like we maybe said with a couple of others, it's just a combination of things in here. Their luck running out, their consistency running out, losing the manager that they had all that with, and maybe just this jigsaw puzzle not quite fitting together. But yeah, they scrape through here, I think, in this one, in the quarterfinals.
Davey, when you're looking as a neutral at the time with Juve's track record and the fact they've been at the absolute top for 3 years now, and they come through that scare, you don't really see the writing on the wall as it is that this is kind of the end of Juventus, really, for a wee while, and they're not going to win it again until as of the time of recording. But us watching on in the spring of '99, go, that's what great teams do. Not the best, few players out. They just know how to get the job done.
Yeah, and it is muscle memory, to quote a Martin phrase. It's a side that have been there and have done it repeatedly, but there are so many issues. It's the old iceberg thing, isn't it? That there are issues going down the way. I think as a club that they were under the spell of Lippi even after he leaves, and I think that they never really recovered for a few seasons. As Adam mentioned, they just did not take to Ancelotti. And I know you found this odd because everybody in Italy plays for everyone else.
Yeah, don't buy that.
Well, they do, but what they do over there is if they hate someone and their club sign them, they tolerate them for a few years, and as soon as they leave, they go back to hating them. So they've got a system basically in place for it. And yeah, as you say though, I must admit that watching this at the time, I did think, you can never count them out. This is what they do. They'll turn up when it matters. Might lose in the final, but they're going to the final because they're Juventus. And it's not an outrageous or an unreasonable position to take, because the evidence of recent history, and there's a lot of names in that side. Looking back now at it with a bit more distance, they don't have a Del Piero replacement, which is understandable. Not many could do what he did. No, and at the time as well, we've got a lot of number 10 type players now, and we mentioned last week about Inter being a side who were built in a certain way to suit a certain player. Juventus weren't built round Del Piero, but he was absolutely vital in turning draws into victories and that kind of thing. He was the guy who would be a difference maker, for a lock picker, for to borrow another one of your phrases, and they don't have that with him. And they tried a lot of players in that position, and it just looked a bit unwieldy. They would always have the ability to shut a game down, but I also think this kind of late 90s, early 2000s, that ability to shut a game down is getting more difficult because more teams have got great attackers. United are a brilliant case in point in that, and they're not going to get frustrated at you sticking 10 men behind the ball, because they'll go, right, fair enough. If you give us enough of the ball, we are going to score.
Yeah,
so the rules are changing. The you can't go a goal up and defend it now. And for Juventus, a side who always knew they had that in the locker, right? That if they're not playing at their best, they can do that. Well, what if you can't do that now? What if sides will go, right, fair enough, if you're going to give us 70% possession, we are going to hurt you? It was just the changing of the guard a little bit, I thought. But at the time, I didn't.
Interesting. Ancelotti today, when we record, talking about there's two ways of managing. One is to do nothing, the other one's to ruin everything. I choose the first. It's all about the players. It's great when you have a squad full of brilliant players, right enough. Far easier said than done. Okay, Rob. Quarterfinals. I'd forgotten about until I watched that Beckham documentary last year, just how much of the narrative around Manchester United versus Inter was around Beckham and Simeone, and just how hot that story still was. The personal duel within a team thing, and I think it's fair to say Beckham was on a mission that evening. He's involved in just about everything United do, fly into that 2-goal lead. But my goodness, there's nearly that sting in the tail, Simeone scoring, chopped off.
Yeah.
Well,
it's an iffy, yeah. I'm still not sure what it was to set up for, to be honest. Yeah, but Beckham played with intense focus. I mean, Beckham was fantastic all season, really. Even more so when you consider the context. You know, come back from the World Cup, death threats, effigies, and so on. He was just, it was his best season, probably his entire career, certainly at United. And nose ahead of 96, 97, I would say, when he was interestingly playing central midfield a lot, which people kind of always said he couldn't do, but was actually amazing. But anyway, that's by the way. Yeah, that game, it's an odd one, really, because first half United were really good. They scored twice. Beckham made both goals for York. There was another unbelievable cross for Cole where he kind of stabbed it and Paliuk saved his feet. It's one of the greatest crosses I've ever seen. But second half they got a bit nervous. Inter had chances. Schmeichel makes that famous kind of flying save from Zamorano. Berg clears off the line. This is the tie that kind of made Hellingberg's Man United career, because he kind of saves 2 goals with very different goal line clearances. It was all really. I mean, 2-0. But interestingly, Ferguson spoke after the game, as he often did actually, about these home ties. I'd have been happy with 1-0. You know, he's spoken a lot about the away goal and everything. So 2-0. He said 2-0 is a pretty good score, but he stressed I'd have been happy with 1-0. So yeah, 2-0 felt great. There was that whole stuff about Ronaldo. In the end, Zamorano played. It was an odd kind of 2-0 because they got more and more nervous. But like Berg cleared off the line last minute, and that just changes everything. I mean, although the second leg ends 1-1, I think if that goal goes in, I don't think they go through because they were battered in Milan, to be honest, for a good part of the game. But Beckham that whole season, I mean, when people talk about the great United midfielder, Giggs, Keane, Scholes, Beckham, I feel like Beckham is a distant fourth in most people's estimations. I just wouldn't agree with that at all. Certainly not at United. I just thought he was, most of the time, he was absolutely fantastic at United, really. Obviously, it went wrong towards the end when he fell out with Ferguson, the whole lifestyle and everything. But particularly in this season, Keane and Beckham are streets ahead of Giggs and Scholes. Giggs scores a famous goal against Arsenal, but he doesn't actually have a particularly good season. Beckham is just an absolute constant. Just make goals. His work rate was incredible. But also, I think you spoke about this before, he had this really kind of quiet determination that he doesn't have credit for, that he would overcome things that would break most people, whether it's Capello, telling him to bugger off basically, and he comes back from it. The World Cup stuff, I thought he was a phenomenal player. Best crosser I'd ever seen at that point in time, but also a better player than that. I mean, he could finish, he could pass, he was smart enough. I thought it was amazing.
I always thought that a great example of that quality that you're talking about, Rob, was the Tottenham game.
Yes, exactly.
The whole stadium is shitting itself, right? Exactly. I mean, it is. When Tottenham score, the whole stadium, you can sense that the tension is there. Goal. And Beckham just goes, "No, fuck this, right? Give me the ball." And I love that. And give me the ball. I'll make something happen. That, we talk about bravery a lot, and it's usually guys, who've had a head knock that get patched up going, and that's great. Bravery is 60,000 people.
Even if he was playing like shite, he never ever hid.
Give me.
He always.
Keane has
that line. Keane has that line. What is it? Want the ball when you don't want the ball. And I don't think you could ever accuse Beckham of not wanting the ball in those circumstances. Yeah, I mean, there were times, he struggled at United. Of course, there were, particularly towards the end. But I thought his attitude was kind of beyond reproach, really. And this game, you're right. There's a really symbolic, the handshake beforehand, and Beckham kind of symbolically really grabs Simeone. But you're right. How different it is if Simeone scores. And there's not much wrong with that goal, to be honest. Yeah,
I think
United rode their luck throughout.
I think they did, but I also think Ferguson did a bit of a number on them as well. Like there's a couple of quite interesting things tactically. I read just to kind of refresh, but Michael Cox's mixer. There's a good bit on United Inter and United Juventus in here. It's Luchescu that's the Inter manager at this point. I think this is this season that we mentioned earlier on, that they had Gigi Simone the year before, who was very, I think, maybe what we think about Ancelotti now. He just gave the players a platform and set them up and they went out and played. But it was Luchescu And then, as we mentioned, Roy Hodgson come back for a bit before Lippy then comes the summer after. But it was a kind of 3-4-2-1, Michael Cox says. 3-4-2-1, Zamorano and Djorkaeff and Baggio as a sort of front three. Maybe a bit of concern because United were very much that 4-4-2, and you concede in the centre of the pitch against an Italian team. But I think, as per Michael Cox, he said it kind of played into Ferguson's hands a little bit. He did that thing with Irwin and Neville where he kept them narrow, so they kind of overloaded. The four of the defenders could then deal with the three attackers.
The second goal,
but then Beckham and Giggs, though, like they just obviously it's three at the back for Inter, so you're thinking, right, there's going to be a bit of an issue there. But Beckham and Giggs are just so aggressive at the fullbacks. Aaron Winter is playing at left wing back, which isn't ideal for a central midfielder. And Beckham just killed him
either. Yeah,
Beckham killed him.
He didn't have the pace to play there. He looked uncomfortable. He kept getting dragged inside, which is perfectly natural. Inter were a bit of a mess, really. As soon as Ronaldo was at the side, they panicked a little bit. But Beckham tears him a new one.
He returns though, Adam, for the San Siro.
He does. But
they, as Rob says, they do throw everything. And Schmeichel, to be fair, he wasn't impressive for me in the groups at all, but he stands up. United kind of stand up. They finally get that goal with Ventil, I think, around 60 odd minutes or whatever. And then there's this feeling, right, here it comes. But it doesn't. And Scholes, it pops up and
Scholes off the bench,
puts it to bed.
Huge chance. About 6 minutes before Scholes scores, Ellis misses an amazing chance to bring it level. If that goes in,
drags it, doesn't he? Kind of drags it wide. But do you say the Ferguson had a plan for Ronaldo last week?
I'm not sure.
So he played Johnson. Johnson in midfield that day. He left Scholes out and he played Johnson and Keane in midfield.
Which I think probably sort of sums it up, doesn't it? Because it's one of those things. I know we'll come on to talking about Juventus, and it's a different type of plan. Whether that's because Keane and Scholes are out, and it necessitates it, I'm not sure. But yeah, I don't know whether you can really have a plan like you said. But it's understandable that I think with a 2-goal lead going into the game that they played a little bit more defensively. Inter were concerned about the flanks, given what Beckham and Giggs had done in the game before. But yeah, Inter got the job done. Man United got the job done.
Do you know the other thing he did in that game? It's worth just a tactical aside. When it was 1-0, so not long before Scholes scores, he brought on Phil Neville for Giggs purely to mark Javier Zanetti, who was giving him so much trouble, which I thought was interesting.
That's a real feature, isn't it, really, of him doing that? I mean, obviously you've got much later on Park Ji-sung coming into the games and doing just a specific thing against a specific player. Yeah.
I had a friend at uni at the time, no fan of Manchester United, and they'll never get out of that group. Of course they did. They'll only get past Inter. They'll not get past Juventus. Every single round, he was absolutely sure they were done for. He looked right. I'll say he looked right after that first leg of that semi-final, even though I remember Giggs scoring that equaliser. Antonio Conte obviously had already put Juventus. Early control, that away goal just felt like such a killer for British teams. Haven't quite got round to getting used to it. Giggs gets that back, but even then, as a neutral Rob, it felt, it's 1-1's not enough. You needed one of those big Old Trafford nights, wee bit like Inter, everything kind of goes for you. You've got a margin. And I go back to early goal in the Nou Camp in that group stage. In the past, it's collapse. Now, this is not vintage Juventus, but with that away goal in their pocket, just over 10 minutes, they're 2-0 up. It's done. Any Italian team in this situation, the tie's over and the dream's over for another year. Is there anyone in whoever you were watching that with or talking to around that time that felt, no, we just need one to come back in? Because like that night in the Nou Camp, there is a response. Keane obviously scores that header. There's a very quick equaliser, and all of a sudden, this narrative that we were getting so used to now about British teams just falling apart, in these difficult big grounds, it's been turned on its head. The story's different.
Yeah, the only thing I would say, I mean, you're right. I thought they'd know. When it went 2-0, I remember thinking, well, Juventus won the last 2 semi-finals at home 4-1, and this will be the same. But what I would say is, looking back, they weren't actually playing badly. Whereas, for example, Barcelona away, they were slaughtered for 20 minutes. They actually weren't playing badly. They just happened to concede 2 fairly shit goals. One is from a set piece.
Real Inzaghi.
Yeah, exactly. It's a classic. Yeah. And I agree totally with what you said in the previous episode, by the way, about Inzaghi. It's not kind of fair that he's seen as a bit of a joke now. Second one is a big deflection. They weren't playing badly. But having said that, no, I wouldn't have given them prayer. But you watch it back and you see that there is good kind of rhythm in the passing. Cole and York start to make things happen. And I mean, maybe you're kind of putting it on with hindsight. When it goes to 2-1, you think they're banging the game. I mean, I agree that Juventus won what they were. They finished like 7th or 8th, but they still had an aura. And they still had, they had played really well at Old Trafford. First half, they could have been 4-0 up. I mean, that should have been 2-0 up, probably on balance, but they had 4 big chances. They played Zidane as the number 10 in both games. You're talking about Del Piero, and it worked really well because they had David Deschamps, Delivio and Conte, Zidane behind Inzaghi. I couldn't get near him. But then it turned really quickly. And United just started to, Ancelotti will say that Juventus got too comfortable at 2-0, but I do think it was just a sheer speed combined with quality of United's attacking play that started to overwhelm them, really, and that intensity as well. So there was an element of Britishness, but clearly it was a bit more sophisticated, a bit more classy. Beckham again plays brilliantly. Giggs didn't make the game; he was injured. It's kind of touch and go. So Blomqvist plays really well. Didn't have a good final. York again, fantastic. Cole was really sharp. It's interesting that we remember this game obviously for Roy Keane's performance, but in the Italian press, I think Cole got man of the match in a couple of papers. So basically, it was like not quite the perfect forward performance, but something like that. I just think York and Cole throughout that season, the final is an exception, but away from home, they were just running teams ragged in a way that probably an English team hadn't done, certainly not since the ban, and not in my lifetime anyway.
The thing about the Keane performance, sorry, Martin, go on.
It's control. It's not going around kicking people.
Well, this is exactly what I was going to ask you, Davey, because we kind of talked about this last night. We're going to get to 2005 in due course, and Gerrard's performance that night is kind of compared very closely with Keane's and Turin, but you very much are not of that opinion.
I am very much not of that opinion. Gerrard's performance, it's wonderful, right? But it's up and at him, Roy of the Rovers, we're 3-0 down, no control, and it comes off. Roy Keane's performance is different, and I think is slightly better because what he manages to do is look, we all love that story of one man just going and leading. But what Roy Keane did, because the situation that United were in, is he doesn't get them going. There's this myth that's built up that he gets them going with this sort of box-to-box charge. If he'd done that, Juventus would have picked United off, right? It would have been 4-0 by half-time, it would have been done. He gets them going with his passing, right? And it starts off, it's such a great build-up. He starts off with just getting on the ball and making simple passes. 3 yards, right? Square balls. Then he starts playing longer passes. And then the rest of the team, instead of panicking or thinking we're done, they respond. I don't think I've seen a performance where one man has basically gone round and plugged in the other 10, a stage where they could have been done. And it is different, but to me it was the level of intelligence and maturity, and not always maturity is not something that you always associate with Keane, because he could lose his temper, as we know. But in this case, had he played with tactical and discipline, lads, Gerrard could do it, and it would work. Sometimes it was wonderful. And I'm not in any way doing that thing where I want to praise one thing, so I've got to criticise. And I'm not. It worked. It was amazing. It was wonderful to watch. But in Keane's case, he realised, if I do that, if I start running a bit mad and cracking shots from 30 yards to try and get a response. This team will eat us. And maybe it was the respect that we talked about in a previous show that United had for Juventus. But what he does is so clever. Just give me the ball, and he starts off, as I say, simple passes, take the sting out of it. Then he builds up to, right, come on, and then he builds up to let's go and attack. And what it does is it absolutely sparks the other players in the side from... I'm not accurately describing it. I hope listeners go and watch it, because it was such a mature and intelligent way of doing it, where he sized up the situation on the pitch. And I said to you guys last night, I really hate when I hear footballers say, oh, we had to get to half time so the manager could do a reset. Why?
Yeah.
Why can't you do it on the pitch? Roy Keane looked around and he said, right, we need to just... And I just thought the control of the ebb and flow of the football match was absolutely outstanding. I don't think I've seen someone seize up a situation as perfectly and respond to it and come up with a 3-point plan, because it is, this is needed for the next 10 minutes. Then we need to do this. Finally, we'll do that. It was fucking outstanding.
Yeah, it's passing. It's leadership.
I liked the some of the approaches in these two legs by Ferguson as well. I think he maybe tried the same trick I mentioned against Inter. He maybe tried to do that to Juventus in the first leg, go with a 4-4-2 against them, and maybe was just a little bit too open against has to be said, a much better midfield with Deschamps and Davids and Zidane in the middle. But he did tweak it. We started to see Beckham coming a little bit narrower, and I think they sort of continued that in the away leg. Beckham and Blomqvist played loads this year, much more than I
loved him. I thought he was brilliant.
Was this his only
pretty much
season?
He got injured and he effectively didn't play again. No, he was excellent in a lot of games. He was dreadful in the final, but he was excellent in a lot of games.
But I think
he's been so good for Gothenburg against United, obviously.
Yeah, exactly.
That adaptability piece, I think Keane takes control, but I think there's just that adaptability there where he just solidifies things. I think Nicky Butt really helps in this game as well. If I'm honest, it wasn't... Scholes was obviously not on the... he didn't start. He came on and got the booking as we know. But I think having Butt there just helped Keane as well. That he could go and dictate if he had to. Obviously, he can then get up and get in for the header as well. So I think there was just a few things from the manager as well over both of these rounds for me, Inter and Juventus, where he's done something that never worked and he's changed it and he's adapted and he's managed to get things going. But ultimately, Keane, York and Cole in this one are decisive, because I think, as we said earlier on, when you're 3-1 down to Juventus away and they've got the away goal as well, you definitely need to do something. So Keane and the manager for me were both huge for this one.
We've talked about slaying ghosts in this show quite a bit, and this must have been a huge one, Rob. The mighty Juventus. I know United had beaten them in the groups quite well actually last year, but this is a different ball game, different situation. We're going to talk about the final now. It cannot be extricated from what's going on previously. The semi-final against Arsenal, of course, the final was pretty standard actually in the end, the FA Cup final. That final day, when I think it's already been mentioned in terms of the title. As a fan, you've got rid of the big bad Juventus. You're in the final finally, and part of everything that you've just seen. And for example, Arsenal should have been in that FA Cup final. Arsenal probably should have had their second double in a row. They probably would have, actually, if Dennis Bergkamp scores that penalty. Yeah. That's just how football happens when you get two brilliant teams who are just so evenly matched, and it's a toss of the coin stuff. But those tosses are going your way. The players seem to buy into it. Do the support buy into it? Because I'm a football fan, and I'd still be thinking, how can we fuck this up?
Oh, no, I mean, every game was terrifying. And I tell you particularly because towards the end of the league season, they were set for after they dropped a couple of points at Anfield, of all places, and fucking Paul Ince got a late equaliser. They were on course for a last day goal difference shootout, which you know all about, of course, a couple of years later, a few years later. And that was absolutely terrifying. And now, thankfully, Arsenal had lost at Leeds, which changed it. But No, yeah, and Arsenal was such a good side. Like, I can't stress that enough. How brilliant and intimidating. And Chelsea also finished third, not far behind. Only lost 3 league games. Everything felt so precarious. Of course, you go into the final knowing that Keane and Scholes is suspended. Now, admittedly, Bayern without 2 of their best players, Lizarazu and Elber, so that's kind of significant. But they're not central midfield. That was a kind of a big thing. But yeah, the whole season was just. I mean, I found something. The last 43 hours of the season, United were only comfortable, i.e., 2 goals ahead, for something like 67 minutes. So every game was just fucking. Now that doesn't include Inter at home because 2-0 didn't feel safe, certainly not the second leg. But even so, there were no. This wasn't like City or whoever winning 5-0, 4-0. It was so precarious, and I think that's what makes it so special. But yeah, it's like every game, Blackburn away, Blackburn about to be relegated. That was a terrifying game, and almost turned into it because the Blackburn was scored in the last minute, which would have brought you back to the whole goal difference shootout. What I would say also is because the league was kind of not all-consuming. Europe was everything, but the league was a huge thing that year. There was none of the kind of sometimes the comfort you get when you've won it a few times in a row. They hadn't won the previous year. The FA Cup, Arsenal was the final, really. But there almost wasn't time to think about the European Cup final because the title race was so all-consuming. It was only after
this is the thing when you're in one of those runs, isn't it? It's you don't have time to get nervous at times. I think players respond well to that because it's just game after game after game, and it's just getting swallowed up by that whole thing. It was my final exam of uni the day after the final, so I watched that whilst studying very much in inverted commas. Adam, we'll talk about the final minutes in a moment, but the pattern of the game was they've blown it. They haven't turned up really. Bayern are ahead fairly early. Mario Basler again outside the box. Bayern should have put this to bed. I was actually quite annoyed with the way they hit the woodwork because it was almost kind of performative ways not to score. They were kind of going to almost toying with United, which are also going to come back and bite them in the arse. But this huge event, this whole story, this treble that obviously has been in the media consciousness for some time now, and it's fallen flat, and it's not going to happen. It just felt kind of weird watching it as a fairly neutral.
I remember that as well, 100%. It felt flat. Obviously, you get to that point. I wanted Man United to win this 100%, but that early goal takes the wind out their sails, and then you're starting to get to the point. Substitutes are coming on, and you're thinking, right, okay, we'll see what happens here. But it was again, I think I have to say some of the tactical pieces I found looking back really, really interesting. He sort of pulled a bit of a number, I think, on Hitzfeld with the team lineup because Hitzfeld announced his team before the match a couple of days before. I think saying he was going to play Marcus Babbel right back because of the threat of Ryan Giggs. They had obviously Mateus, Thomas Linke, Samuel Kofler as their 3 at the back. Michel Tarnat and Babel as the wing back. Stefan Effenberg and Jens Jeremies, a very strong and functional central midfield, and then Mario Basler, Janker, and Zickler up front. But I think Blomqvist was the wild card, I would say, Rob, in this. I don't think they were really expecting that to happen. There's something Ferguson told him weeks before. Is that right? He told him weeks before he was definitely playing the final?
He did. So what happened was, obviously, Keane and Scholes was suspended, and Ferguson decided really early that he wanted, as he put it, penetration from central midfield. So his original plan was actually to play Giggs there because Giggs had played a couple of times, famously against Porto in the 4-0, sort of from the centre. And he wanted to get a Mateus, who had been vulnerable and had a bad game when United drew 2-2 in Munich. So his original plan was to play Giggs and Butt. He changed his mind because of what happened in the cup final when Keane went off early injured and Beckham played really well. And he decided that he wanted a passer rather than a runner from central midfield. But ultimately, it meant the same thing. Blomqvist was going to play. I mean, I thought at the time that he would play Johnson and Butt and just play a kind of stiff, safe midfield. But But his argument, and I think it makes total sense actually, is that because he'd lost a passer not to the goals, but actually Keane, who was such an underrated passer, I think. And Beckham was United's best attacker in the game by a distance, really. Apart from Solskjær had a really big impact. So yes, that was Blomqvist was always going to play either way. It was kind of just once he decided to play Beckham centre, Giggs goes right. Well, he played a little bit. I mean, he wasn't comfortable there, but he played there. For example, in the 6-2 at Bromby, played there a bit when they used to rotate him in Sharp, so he could do it. But yes, that was kind of. I mean, there's no satisfactory solution really with that team to lose two such midfielders in a day of not much squad depth. There's no satisfactory solution. So I've never been too critical of his team selection personally.
Yeah. In retrospect, it's probably not surprised that the match turned the way it did, that the overall piece was very ununited for that season. It wasn't particularly dynamic. It was kind of flat, but yet the finish very much was. Well, let's talk about those final minutes. Before we do, everyone knows Clive Tildy's commentary, of course. They always score. We're going to listen to Radio 5 Live and just the whole piece of just before that Sheringham goal, and then basically saying extra time's coming, guys, and then of course it didn't.
Beckham spins and Beckham plays it to his left. Gary Neville's left foot plays it into the penalty area, and Effenberg, tired though he is, diverts it behind for a corner.
Key for the night now again. Delivery by Beckham. Everybody up, absolutely everybody, including Schmeichel.
Schmeichel's inside the Munich penalty area. Beckham crosses, stoppage time. Schmeichel jumps, falls to the far post towards York. Half cleared, Giggs shoots, Sheringham equalises! Teddy Sheringham has equalised in stoppage time for Manchester United! Can you believe it? Oh, Teddy went to Manchester United and he might win the lot yet.
Well, you felt it was coming. I mean, he had an earlier chance with Dwight York about a minute earlier. Beckham threw the corner in. Everybody challenged. For a second, Bayern had a chance to clear. The ball was returned. And at first, when Sheringham put it in the back of the net, I'm straight away looking at offside. He wasn't offside. What happened was most of the Bayern players had pushed out, and Sheringham even didn't make great contact, but he made enough contact.
Naturally, programmes will be delayed if we require extra time. And remember, in extra time, a golden goal will finish it.
And Manchester United have got their legs, Alan.
Has the pendulum swung? Red flares go off at the end to our left. We've got about a minute of stoppage time to go. It's now Manchester United 1, Bayern Munich 1. Teddy Sheringham's vital contribution as it's laid forward by Irwin, and Solskjær's after it, and he's onside, and Sheringham makes a run into the penalty area. Solskjær just to the left of the box, tries to pull the cross back and hits Kaffour, and it's a corner to Manchester United, and Schmeichel won't come up for this one.
I think that's a safe bet.
Surely not a winner in stoppage time. We've already had an equaliser. Beckham crosses from the left, right-footed, it's a clear header, and it's lifted into the net. Solskjær has won the European Cup for Manchester United. It's absolutely astonishing. It was Sheringham who headed it on, and Solskjær stabbed the ball with his right foot into the roof of the net, and Manchester United rule Europe. I don't believe it, but it's happened. They've come from 1-0 down in stoppage time to beat Bayern Munich, and the Munich players are on their knees. They don't know what's hit them. Manchester's hit them.
There's something so evocative about radio that I don't know what it is. They can't rely on seeing what everyone's seeing what they're seeing. And I'm not a huge Alan Green fan, but there's just raw emotion in the moment happening that night, Rob. This is why sport is the greatest thing that has ever been invented by mankind, because this looked to be petering out, a flat end to this big narrative, and you get a finish like that is almost kind of unbelievable.
Yeah, nothing happens. From about the 5th minute to the 70th, nothing happens, really. And then United take risks tactically, and Bayern, that's when Bayern have all their chances. So the kind of idea that Bayern battered United isn't strictly true. They did pick them off when they went to Diamond Field with kind of Butt on his own, essentially. what I found interesting watching back is you can sort of see it coming. Bayern, their legs just suddenly go. And I think Solskjær obviously scores the winner, but he plays a really big part. Actually, he just it gives United an energy and an intensity. Like things start to happen. He comes on after about 80 minutes, and in that time he has 3 shots at goal. Just things start to happen. Bayern just their legs go. Having said that, they should still win. Of course, they should. They're with a better team. But it's not. The first goal doesn't come out of nothing, is all I would say. And like even Ron Atkinson, on TV commentary says, well, like, if they get one, I think they'll go on to win it. It's weird the way Bayern just do suddenly look really, really, really tired. Maybe that's me looking at knowing what happens, but I genuinely think that. But yeah, I mean, also 2 set piece goals. They're not good goals. They're not the kind of goals United scored all season. Even the first one comes from Gary Neville, of all people, winning a throw-in on the left wing. Like, what the fuck's he doing there? Or winning a corner, rather. He wins a corner off Effenberg, which leads to the first goal. The only thing I would say that they're good deliveries from Beckham, who had an excellent game, and that's really important. Obviously, it's really important. But it'd be so easy just to lazily swing, just get it in there. But there's a precision to it.
That is not really... my pet hate for fullbacks or wingers or whomever, whether it's getting to position A in the final third or corners, just hitting it. So I've discharged my duties here. There's precision, there's whip, there's danger.
Really,
just on Davey, on Bayern just losing their legs. Even before that equaliser, will it be in their mind that United in this particular season, in this particular form, always score and always score late?
There's a bit of finishing line-itis. I mean, we have to say that. By the way, I just wanted to I have to sit next to Martin at games. Sometimes he really, really does hate when fullbacks and wingers just cross without looking and say, I put it in a good area. I'm stunned, Martin, you haven't been picked up on camera, to be honest. when that happens.
No one there. It wasn't a good area.
It wasn't a good area, exactly. I do go back to something Rob said where there was a sense of if they get one, I didn't think they'd get 2, instantly. But I did think if they get one, I actually thought
they'll get the golden goal in extra time. I think that's what everyone was thinking.
The one that I just thought that they'll run over the top of them in extra time because they just suddenly looked fitter, they looked stronger. They suddenly look bigger, they just suddenly that it doesn't, again, looking back, surprise me that it was 2 set piece goals because suddenly they just physically looked like they were a much stronger side. And for all we praise the Bayern mentality as a club, you have to say, I don't know, maybe the fact, as you say, Martin, that look, they always score and they've been rubbish. And we've hit the woodwork 3 times. And as you say, shots that should never be hitting the woodwork. We should have buried this game. We should be sitting right now 3-0 up and the game is done. But I also think something that's under the fans get tense. Watch it back. The fans do that German thing of they don't shut up for 90 minutes and they're utterly silent in the last sort of 2 or 3 minutes, even before United score. They are. So if the team aren't panicking, Martin, the fans are, and I always think that communicates. I always think that transfers. There was just a sense of, United, they could get one. I don't think anyone thought they're going to get 2, but you definitely right up to the final second, nobody was counting United out. And look, how many times have we watched our own team concede a corner in the 94th minute, and you go, "This is getting in." You just know it.
And when your leader, you're talking about legs and everything going, when your leader, captain, legend, is about the same age as Methuselah,
and is bugging off for 10 minutes to go as well.
Yeah, it's kind of, there's maybe something in that. Adam, the best laid plans and all that, and great preparation, and it doesn't matter, does it? Sometimes in football, just get the ball in there, put up 2 new forwards, get it in there, get it in the mixer. But chaos, right? And just having belief in that moment that your guys will snatch it. You can't plan for that.
No, you can't. I wonder, like you said, there was a bit of an inevitability, I think, when United got the first goal, certainly. But some of the subs, I think you could see Bayern are on their last legs 100%. Some of those subs sort of speak to that as well. So is there a kind of mentality thing there as well, where naturally United are going to be pushing, and they can see that they're hanging on, and the subs to me are just a team that is hanging on. What I found really funny, I found a Ferguson quote. This might be in one of your articles, Robs, but apologies. But it says, he said, in the final against Bayern, we did really well understanding how Bayern operated, because I don't know how you would find this out or who would pick it up, but he said they always took Zickler and Basler off when they were winning games. Just always took them off and basically brought on, like we said, maybe Scholl come on and Torsten Fink, I think it was. And they're a little bit solid, a little bit more tight in midfield than what they were with just Effenberg and Ian Jeremy's. But then what he said was, I could then be a bit more aggressive because they did that. So Blomqvist comes off, Sheringham goes on, plays high and wide on the left, but he plays three up front. And then there's just that feeling that onslaught is coming. It's not necessarily just piling players on, because York and Cole swaps with Solskjær, doesn't he? So it's not just a case of just throwing the kitchen sink at it. There's three players up there that they can go and attack. You've then got, I think as Rob said earlier on, you've got Butt in the middle, and then kind of Beckham and Giggs, I think, is a bit of a sort of halfway midfield three. So it's wild when you think about it. But because of what Bayern did, United adapted, and then, I mean, the goals, I'm not going to say the goals are down to great tactical shifts or fantastic moves. There's an element of luck in there as well. But yeah, there's maybe just that ascendancy piece that someone is retreating back so much, the other manager goes for it and thinks, well, I know they're going to do that, therefore here is my plan to get these players on the pitch, or Sheringham in particular, I guess, for the first goal, get them on and see what can happen.
There's also delivery. I mean, let's, we sometimes kind of think that corners, as you say, especially late ones, well, they're just getting it in the box and seeing what happens. They're getting in the box with high quality. That, the last thing you want to see, I think the kind of modern equivalent of it is Ward-Prowse. If you're defending a narrow lead, the last thing you want is somebody that is renowned for whipping the ball in extremely dangerously when you're tired. And United, they pin them in there and they get corners, and they just sow seeds of discord, and then you have this extreme quality delivery which improves your chance. If he chips up one, into the centre of the goal, then the goalkeeper comes and takes it all day long. But he doesn't. He puts it in with whip, and he sows confusion, and he sows, psychologically, having someone who can come and just whip a ball in like that 9 times out of 10, I think has such an effect on an opposition.
Rob, they're more remarkable Champions League finals as a whole 90 plus minutes.
It's not a great game.
2005, obviously, and the perfection of 03. But in terms of that finish, I can probably only think of the Manchester City title win in 2012 for getting into that period of a game thinking they're kind of done. I don't think I'd ever seen anything like that. I mean, the City were behind. No. Never mind, just needing to try and get back into the game. This, as a United fan, must be as good as it gets. I mean, I remember you and I talking as it looked like, and they did, City were going to win the treble. And you said something quite pertinent. Said they will, but it won't be like ours, and they'll never have what we had. The way that it happened, those are what football fans live in. Those moments are what we chase. That's why we keep going back and put up with nonsense every week.
Yeah, it's easy to say, of course, and I'm sure City fans disagree, but there are different types of glory, aren't there? City's was a glory of superiority more than United's. Like, there's no doubt United were luckier at times and ran close to the wind. But I cannot conceive that it will ever be a better season, personally, even if a team does the quintuple, because there were so many late winners. So they came from behind to win or draw 17 games that season. There were so many amazing moments culminating in that. But you think coming 2-0 down Juventus, the greatest game I've ever seen involving United, the Arsenal FA Cup semi-final. Like I said, the Barcelona 3-alls were like album tracks in the context of the season. the thing is, obviously no one expected him to do that, but there was a kind of precedent. I genuinely remember saying at half-time in that game, the Liverpool game is the precedent, and what happened there in the FA Cup, they were 1-0 down, and they'd kind of been a bit lucky. Liverpool could have scored more. Fourth round of the FA Cup, and they scored in something like the 87th and the 90th, and Solskjær scored the winner. This was obviously even more dramatic. I just what I like about this more than anything, it kind of fit the profile of the team. They were just they were constantly coming from behind, always scoring late goals, often swashbuckling, not in this particular game, but yeah, I feel like that encapsulates. Ferguson said it himself. My whole approach to life could be boiled down to that 101 seconds between the two goals, and in playing time, it's 26 seconds. Like Bayern have gone so much, it's 26 seconds of playing time. And I love that change of mood as in the last. You do sense it now. What would be interesting would be to watch it back if it stayed 1-0. Would you still sense change of mood? I genuinely think you would.
Yeah, you do.
And
you do.
Yeah, and they just kind of and they kind of wake up essentially. They've been quite leggy all game. I cannot conceive honestly that a team could ever have a better season just because of it's not what they did, it's the way they did it. But I think you also have to remember the context of the time. Like these two are reasonably common now. You know, I remember watching Arsenal last year. They were 3-1 down at home to Southampton. They eventually drew 3-3. I think they scored their second goal in about the 87th minute, and I thought they'll win this, and they almost did. Back then, it just did not happen at all. Never minded a game of this significance. It was just ridiculous, really. The one thing I would say, but time also hasn't been kind to it in other ways because English clubs have had much more authoritative wins in Europe. Not just City, but even Liverpool to an extent. I know they had to come from 3-0 down, but you could make an argument that United should have gone out at every stage, really. And I think it's a perfectly reasonable argument. You know, first half at home to Juventus and away to Inter, they were genuinely battered. But it was, to me, it's all about the experience, really, and ultimately that's what watching football is about. But against that, I think there is a regret of Ferguson that they never had that kind of really, kind of we are superior to everyone else, that kind of victory. Yeah, exactly.
We can walk around with that.
If you want to win a game, how would you?
And that's what you're trading, isn't it? It's wandering around with a trophy where the whole of Europe knows they're the best team in the world, which wasn't the case because there's plenty of contenders.
No, I agree.
You won the cup, but again, in that moment, who cares?
And also the treble was unusual at that point as well. That's the other thing.
Oh yeah.
In the big five leagues, no one had done it. Obviously, Celtic, blah blah blah. But it was just about experience. Honestly, even just things like a last minute winner at Charlton in January, which was absolutely huge. Charlton would be relegated, but there's so many moments like that. It's as good as it will ever get.
When it's for you, it's for you. Thank you, Rob, for detailing that account of a very special season. There are a few others to come as well of other interest, but thank you so much.
Cheers.
Thank you, Adam.
I can't let it go without mentioning it, but David, that last minute winner.
Of course.
If Bayern Munich did not have two men on the posts, they'd be champions because it'd be offside.
But if the men in the post, they never gave offside from corners in those days. We talked last week about how they don't give offside in normal play when the guy's 2 yards offside, so they're never giving it from a corner. At the end of the day, Adam, never happened. At the end of the day, if the guys on the post had done their job, Manchester United would have been sitting here saying, well, we never turned up and they wouldn't have won, right? Men on the post, two men up front, big guy and a wee guy, right? That's I
mean, it was big guy and a wee guy versus two men in the post. Your paradox and
this is the problem. What happened then, because there were a big man and a wee man up front and two guys on the post, what happened is the universe broke. It was like typing Google into Google, and you ended up with this mad finale. That's exactly what happened, right? The world just went haywire. Yeah, exactly. It was like pushing two atoms together. but it still doesn't change the fact that it's perfection. And yeah, Adam, yeah, get it up. You thanks, Martin. The United only won by putting on a big guy and a wee guy up front. So there you go.
Thanks, David.
Yeah.
An absolute pleasure, gents. Thank you.
Next week is a Q&A. We're going to take a pause before UEFA get the bank balances well inflated with their 2 group phase stage, and we'll talk about how that developed and was quickly shelved. But yeah, any thoughts you have on the era that we've covered thus far, put them in this thread, and David, Adam, and I will get through them next week. Until then, bye for now.